Hello and welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Rife Gallery programming series for our current show, All We Cannot Forget, curated by Shar Norman. Today we are thrilled to present artist Isabel Zeng. As a brief reminder, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode. Feel free to utilize that chat function to ask questions. We'll be sure to get to them at the end of the talk. And also, please keep in mind that because we're presenting from separate locations, there may be some variation in bandwidth, and if something fluctuates or freezes, please bear with us. All right. Thank you and welcome, Isabel.
Thank you. Thank you, Kat. And thank you for the opportunity for me to talk about my work and my art practice today. I'm going to start with a little bit about myself. I came to art fairly late. I was born and raised in China. And given the culture at the time, growing up, I was exposed more to what I should do or what I was expected to do than what I want to do. So long story short, after I graduated from college, major in finance, I came to the US for graduate study. So at the time, I was actually quite interested in film studies and especially visual storytelling in films. However, since I had to, do the right thing, I applied for graduate study in economics instead, and eventually got my PhD in 2009 and got into academia in the same year. So being an economist is actually a lot like being a social scientist. I love teaching, I love research, and I love solving puzzles. And eventually got tenure. And and this is the story, of one side of me. The story of the other side of me, which is the story of me stumble into art, however, is the one that I want to share today. So after moving to Bowling Green, Ohio, while I was exploring the area, I got really fascinated by the Toledo Art Museum and started spending a lot of time there. And finally decided to take a jewelry and metals class with them, and just for fun. But what I didn't know is the moment I picked up a jewelry saw, and that's it, like I could never put it down. And even to this day, when I see solder flow up to a perfect solder seam, I still get that high on the top of my head. I just completely fell for the process of making and metalsmithing. So anyway, one thing led to the other. I found myself always wanting more from art, like always want to make more, want to learn more, want to understand more, and want to feel more. So I did. So after making jewelry for about 4 to 5 years, and I joined an MFA program at Bowling Green State University, study under Tom Buer, and as I did that as a part-time student since I'm still working full-time. So I spent 5 years in the program and eventually graduated 2 years ago in 2022, becoming a mixed media artist and specialized in performance and video. I wish there was some, fancy title attached to the art side of me, but no, not really. Just a very, very passionate maker. So yeah, like I said, this is the journey that I really want to share with you today. Starting all the way from when I was a jeweler. Um, as all we know, being a jeweler, we all start from designing work to adorn the body. And at the time, I didn't realize that, but a lot of my earlier design work already present kind of a sense of fluidity, almost like they are trying to work alongside with the body. I later realized that, I don't really see my work as merely adorning the body, but more like collaborating with the body to enhance identity. So even back when I was making production work, I would tell my clients that, the piece of jewelry that you like the best is not necessarily the one with the best looking design, but actually is the one that when you wear it, your body feels the best, the most powerful. So I began to include the role of the body in making and designing a lot more, especially after I joined the program, doing more research and making. These are the pieces that I made, some of the first pieces that I made after I joined the MFA program. They're both rings. On the left side, bunny ears, the ears supposed to stand up on your finger. And the right-hand side, this is a double finger ring and supposed to express the sense of things slipping through your finger. And I also began to document the piece in addition to on the pedestal, but also on the body, involving the body. And this piece I call the voice is made by one sheet of new gold forming into a trumpet-shaped object. I have always loved metal forming. I love the process. It's just seeing the metal shape and form. It's almost like having a conversation with the metal and the material. And the C pot here in this neck piece is also formed with one sheet of sterling. So overall, these work, seeing them as objects and seeing them on the body can give you very different perception and understanding of the work. So yeah, the body, as I make more work and, doing more research, other than including the body, or thinking about the body, I also begin to research the concept of the body, what it means to us and why it's important. And if you really think about it, actually, many, many artists have shown us that the body is actually the evidence of us interacting with the world in our own way. So, for example, we have Anna Mendieta. She pressed her face and her breasts on a sheet of flat glass and document the deformity of her feminine body parts to confront and challenge this definition of traditional beauty or natural beauty. And a more contemporary example about the same concept is from Lauren Coleman, some of her earlier work. This is a series called Hardware. And she put this gold objects against the most tender part of her body and kind of expressed this, this ironic relationship between the traditional beauty and the pain that it can inflict. And we also got Rebecca Horn, right? Love her body extension series, especially. It's like a quiet scream of the body for a desire to reach out, to connect. And this is shown very isolated environment. And more contemporary, we have Matt Lambert, unlike Rebecca Horn, she put the body in the world, and Matt Lambert almost like bringing the world to the body, emphasizing materiality, exploring how the body can be adorned by different unique materials, like cake icing on the left side, this image, and flower petals on the right side. So, yeah, I mean, doing quite a lot of research, I kind of began to have what I now call my experiment year in 2019. I basically have like a year-long time that I just, took my time to explore different materials instead of, uh, purposefully trying to, just make something, right? So what I did is I just tried to explore different materials and their relationships to the body and the experience of my body and I in this relationship. I would grow sea salt crystals over silver and put it on me and then experience the sensation when my skin dries out from the salt. And I would also explore, the fiberglass insulation material and how my skin reacts to this material. Essentially, it's like the sensation of a million cuts, right? And other than skin and tactile sensation, I also thought about, how would the tension of the body and the object change if the object or the adornment can go onto only one spot of the body. And when the body needs to support and maintain that balance, between this, this adornment and body relationship, right? And also, what happened if the object could change the tension between the perception of the body, making it stronger or weaker or more aggressive or less aggressive, and also the perception of the world when the wearer is wearing that. Okay. And also, finally, I also explored, how the object can change the tension between the two bodies, by including a different performer. So this piece, verbal abuse, there's really not too much special for it in terms of the materials. It's simply an object that I made that try to link the two performer, but I always call this my gateway piece for me. So, I make this piece and then, I performed with my friend and then we did a photo shoot. And then after the photo shoot, I went home and clicked through all the images. At first you focus on the technicality, right? It's like, oh, I need to fix the lighting here. And then, oh, the camera angle should have been, more towards left or right. And oh, what's wrong with my body posture? I'm holding my shoulders weird, all that good stuff when you look at yourself in an image. Then when I click and I saw this picture, the one that I'm showing here, and for whatever reason, I stopped connecting to the image, and I started to connect. I was looking at myself in there, looking at my own eye in the picture. I started to connect to what the person in the image is experiencing. And it's kind of like a mythical moment that I got attacked by a surge of emotions and with all the past memories hitting me all at once. And then I started bawling like a baby. And so after that cathartic moment, it kind of became clear to me that this is what I want my viewers to feel, to sense, to experience, to embody that vulnerability. Like I don't just want to show them that this is about verbal abuse, this symbolizes verbal abuse. I want to show them that this is verbal abuse. Like the body is not only an object here to display who we are, it's a subject, it is who we are, and we are our own body. And so that's the concept of the lit body that I started to explore and research a lot about embodied subjectivity. We experience the world through our own physical body, while our life experience in turn will shape our perception and change how we interact with the world. And in particular, combining this philosophical concept with my art practice, I focus on the lit body in relationship to wearable objects and show this relationship through performance and video. So in 2020, I had my first performance piece called Decolate. I constructed this 28-inch wide brass neck collar, which kind of inherits the historical influence of a Victorian rough collar from the 16th century. And in the performance, it's actually quite simple, simple action. I was wearing this neck collar and I reach in a spinning cotton candy machine with my bare hands. I collect cotton candy and then I shove it in my mouth and trying to bypass the collar. So the visual contrast here is quite important. As you know, this collar, this golden brass neck collar shows status, wealth, and restraint, while this pink cotton candy, delivers the childlike, raw desire and instinctive temptation. So by engaging these two, this performance is trying to express kind of like a constant battle as we live our life. We have a constant battle between the heart and the mind, and hence the title Decolate, right? So the performance was shot as a dual channel video, as shown on the preview was shown on the left-hand side, but I did edit it into a single channel video as the bottom right corner here. And depending on the space of the showing, the video can be shown in different ways. And this piece, Into Battle, this piece is largely driven by material, which is underwires. So we, of course, as women, we all know that underwires, something that are designed to restrain and subjugate women's body. So what I did is I collected used underwires donated by women who I know and I don't know, and built this wearable object. So the form reference a set of double bandoliers that a soldier would typically wear when they go into war. And I wear them in the performance, and I walk through the woods and go through thickets and eventually through the urban area. So this is my way to, challenge power structure, challenge this patriotic control, and to try to show, a new kind of unconventional beauty. The funny thing about this piece is, after I made it in 2020, I put it aside and I stopped looking at it until recently. I found myself revisit this piece a lot, just to remind myself that when we feel like we're losing the battle, it's just one battle. It doesn't mean that we didn't make a difference fighting the fight. All right. And after two pieces, I also decided to make a piece that focused on only one body part instead of, like the holistic of the body action. In this case, specifically, I focus on the hands. Or hand, I mean, in my case. So it's inspired by Rebecca Horn's, one of the body extension series, finger gloves, all the way from 1970s, 1972 specifically. So what I did is I 3D modeled and printed 5 elongated finger extensions. The end of each finger extension was inserted with a peck of tree branch, exposing only the cross section of the tree. And visually, so they serve visually as like an abrupt end of the fingertip, and hence the title Fingertips. Okay. And the performance is quite simple. It's only the hand. So the hand was wearing the finger extension, just constantly reaching forward to the camera and confronting the viewers and tapping the glass and attempting to sense through the glass. So this piece essentially expressed this conflict between nature and technology, right? So, technology advancement extends our reach beyond what our natural body allows us to do. But in the meantime, it's possibly at the cost of truncating our natural sensory experience. And so at this point, you can kind of see that most of my work are constructing restraints and showing the body battling against these restraints. However, as I thought about it, in life, instead of banging against the wall over and over, we often deal with restraint or baggages by embracing them, or process the fight and the losing, and possibly eventually internalizing them. And so these external restraints would eventually become a part of us and forming, us, the self, right? So speaking of the self, all the way from Freud to Jung, the relationship between self and persona, which is who you actually are, and the image that you choose to present to the world, it's a complicated system of relations between, individual consciousness and the society, right? And we all know that we live in a modern civilization. So we present ourselves or present our identity to the world through the roles that we play and the personas that we choose. And eventually, who we are, the self, is formed by internalizing all these personas or life experience that's shaped by the world. Okay, so that's how the world and the outer world and the inner world communicate. So this piece, what's left of us, is exploring this relationship, between exactly like what is self and um, and what you know what is the image that people see us as, and the word persona originally, refers to a theatrical mask in Latin, and that's why I constructed a series of masks for this performance. The narrative of the video is actually quite simple. In a black void, the self, played by me, encounters in total 7 personas, also played by me, all with identical body, wearing a mask with a single piercing and repeating one single motion. And in the meantime, they consciously holding the mask on their face. So this piece really contemplates, human identity, right? Questioning who we actually are beyond societal construct and labels. And this is also the last piece that I made when I was in the MFA program. And then I graduated, and for many reasons, and graduation did not get me a formal art-related professional position, but it really didn't stop me from making work. Or I should say, I don't know how to stop at this point. Like I wouldn't know what I would be if I stopped. So for a while, I continued to make work related to the same concepts that I had been exploring. Here's a simple performance showing my love-hate relationship with myself. Like many of us, through this piece, I discovered that I am much better at torturing myself than caring for myself. I'm also interested in reperforming. So working with my partner, who's also an artist, we reperform Ana Maniata's piece Glass on Face. So just like her original work, we also show or express this deformity of our faces to challenge this societal perception of what is traditional beauty. But in addition to that, we also introduce a watcher in each channel, and the watcher being, each other. So this watcher is kind of like an institutional agent who serves kind of like the conduit between the performer and the viewers outside of the camera. So we are presenting our deformity not only to the greater world, not only to the strange viewers, but probably more frighteningly, we are presenting our deformity to the people that we care, that we have intimate relationship with, and the people by whom we want to be cared. Okay. So that was actually quite a fun piece to make. So yeah, finally, um, related to the concept of the self and persona, as I did a lot of reading and research, I ran into Lacan's mirror stage theory. So what it says is, according to Lacan, the first time we recognize ourselves in a mirror, we turn ourselves into an object that can be viewed from outside our body. So it's a process of identifying the internal self with that external image. So according to Lacan, this marks our first encounter with subjectivity. So reading this theory, it really inspires me to make a self-reflection piece, because the Lacanian real is inaccessible. The world that we see is not real. The world that we perceive is not objective, but is subjective. It's simply a reflection of the imaginary, the Lacanian imaginary, which is the internalized image of ourselves. So yeah, with this concept in mind, first first task is to figure out what materials that I should start with. Then naturally, glass is a natural medium for this piece. And Madeline Rouse Smith, I really love her work. She made these glass wearable to distort her vision and also the appearance of the source of her vision, her eyes, and which is really cool. And going a bit further back, we have this earlier work from at the time a performance artist Giuseppe Pannone, and he mirrored a set of contact lenses and wear them in a performance. So he was temporarily blinded while he was wearing the lenses. And when you look into his eyes, and you can only see your own reflection, and that's why he called this, reversing one's eyes. So yeah, I decided to construct a series of lenses, and starting from not knowing anything about glass as a medium, and learning how to blow glass and co-work, truly try to feel the nature, the quality of this unique material, and finally figure out the form that I want and designing the performance. This entire project actually took me, 2 years to finish. The blown glass bubbles are co-worked and mirrored on the inside. Show it in the progress shot here. And what's interesting about this process is actually the quality of this one-way mirror effect. So when the external light outside of the bubble is stronger than the internal light on the left-hand side image here, the viewer on the outside can only see their own reflection, obviously. But the person who's wearing the bubble can actually see the outside. However, when the inside is lit up, then the person that's looking into the lens can only see their own reflection, while when you're on the outside, you can see what's behind the lens. Okay, so that unique feature is actually very intriguing to me. So having that in mind, I also, of course, try to experiment different surface textures on the lenses to create some kind of distortion on the reflection. And eventually, I constructed a series of 5 lenses, and with each represent a different type of visual distortions. And the idea is we don't see things as what they are, right? We see them as what we are, and these lenses reflect our own subjective self. Okay, and after making the glass element, and I attach each lens with a single handle that I formed using sterling. And the form is essentially to emphasize the performative nature of these lenses instead of their functionality. Okay. And wearing this series of eyewear and performing with them, it's actually quite a unique experience. So I express this unique experience through making a performance-based experimental short film. The synopsis of the film is actually quite simple. A myopic woman, played by me, visits her optometrist. And during the visit, she tries on different optical devices. And as she tries on every single lens, she discovers a piece of her inner self. And as the viewers watching the film, the viewers are also invited into her inner world, of course. And at this point, the vision extends beyond the physical, right, and into the psychological. So, and the film ends with quite an intimate encounter between the inner self and the outer self, of course, both played by me. And essentially, the idea is it really challenges the boundary between the perception and the reality when the inner self and the outer self kind of melt together. Okay. So, oops, excuse me. So I can talk about the film all day, like from character and set design and music and sound design, and I actually really love talking about that. But we don't have all day, so instead I really want to finally touch on the installation of this whole piece. So I have shown the objects and the film separately for this piece before, but um, it is not until the installation at the Rife Gallery that this is the first time when this piece finally comes together. So the installation, first of all, takes place in quite an enclosed environment, kind of almost a relatively like confined dark space of the gallery. And it kind of creates this intimate environment for the viewers and kind of similar to the one in the film. All right, and the objects are displayed on this pentagon-shaped stand, and so they're not displayed linearly. So the viewers have to go in the room, get close to watch the film, and walk around the pedestal, the pentagon-shaped pedestal, um, to observe the objects. And the left-hand side image here kind of shows you a reference in terms of how tall the stand is going to be. Okay, and that point it's significant that I will explain later. So another surprise element about the installation is inside every single lens that are displayed on the stand, there is a tiny video of a rolling eyeball playing behind each lens. And of course, each type of surface treatment of the lens creates this unique distortion of the eyeball. And also, there is a smooth lens with no surface treatment sits on top of the stand. And if you remember how tall the stand is with the visitor standing on the left in the previous slide, and you would recall that the stand, or say the location of that clear lens on the top, it's actually higher than the eye level of an average person. So it's quite difficult to see unless you're like 6'9". So therefore, it makes you wonder, as a viewer, it makes a viewer wonder is if there's an undistorted eyeball in there, just like all the other lenses. And ultimately, I think what I'm trying to say is, in a way, we all bear scars in life, and we're all deformed, and that's what we see. And a clear, undistorted, purely objective vision, a lot of times is often out of reach. So, yeah, I guess that's all I have today. It looks like I finished ahead of time. But if you're interested in my work, you can find me on Instagram and my website. And my website is just my name, isabelzeng.com. My Instagram is with additional Z, Isabel Z Zeng. So at this point, any questions, comments?
That's
You're
great.
welcome.
Yeah, anyone that has questions, pop them into the chat and I will read them out for Isabel. So Isabel, I love that you mentioned that you are better at torturing yourself than being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
But I see a consistency in your work of finding your way to care, to like the discovery of self that you talk about in there is like a kindness in that. And so I'm curious if you can chat a little bit more about in the process of making this work specifically, were there discoveries that have shifted the way that you view self and how you approach work?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I I do agree that, you know, probably unconsciously, as we're making work, we're drawn towards the direction of what we don't have, in this case, like probably self-care. But I think the difference is we all present it in a very different way. And actually, after specifically making this piece, I discovered that it's for me, um, I walk towards control, and that's my way of self-care. It may sound very weird, but um, if you know, think about the concept of the piece initially, and then look at the finished product here, and it was done with actually such control that like almost every single element that I have to translate it um, into a very controlled manner. So I was told, actually, I agree. I mean, it's a self admitting process. I am a control freak. That like I think that is how I establish self care. That's how I care myself, which is try to get things under control. It has it's a balance, especially for performance. It is a true balance between how much of your inner self that you're willing to share. So it's a for first of all, the making process is quite intimate. Like you're displaying a part of yourself that you don't typically display. But how much of that you're willing to share out there. And I think that for my work, it was done in an actually very controlled manner. I have made work that was lost control. It's almost about lost control before, and it resulted in a kind of a long-term depression. So kind of that's how I think it's very tricky to find that balance, that relationship between yourself and art. I know, and I'm almost jealous of those people who can say that they hold art at arm's length, and I cannot because, when I make art, I have to be intimate with it. But my control freak nature tells me that when I'm too intimate with it, and I would not like it. So I think for me, it's really finding that balance that I am comfortable with that distance, that I show enough of the things that I want to show. I share enough of the things I want to share, and I deliver the message that I want to deliver about in the meantime. I don't feel too exposed. Does that make sense? I, I don't
Yes.
think I answered your question very well, but
No, I
um,
think so. I think it's intended for you to take it in the direction that you need for it to go, and that you did that wonderfully. Michael has a question. Can you speak to the ways the materials and material interaction drives or externalizes your thinking?
yeah. So I, I have craft video performance as my major media, but I always identify myself as a maker. So the use of materials, it's actually quite essential in the making process. So that's the reason that to make this piece, I actually have to learn to blow glass. Like I talked to quite a few glass artists and communicated about my idea, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can blow a bubble for you, and this is easy for us." And I tried that approach, but I just I need that connection with the material. So I need to be more hands-on than just watching how the things is done. I actually need to do it myself. I don't know if it is actually one of the process of controlling, speaking of control, but that's how the idea evolved for me. So in the initial idea, the forms were not like lenses, like they were not like this before in the initial idea in my head. It's not until I start blowing glass and start playing with the material and try to experiment different how the hard glass move in when you put on different constraints or put on different textures on the surface. That's when I learn what the material is trying to communicate with me, and and that caused the idea to evolve. So yeah, I think I wouldn't say material is the only driving force of me making my art, but it's a very essential part, and also it's not just using the material; it's communicating with the material.
So, um, you mentioned the focus on hands for fingertips and eyes for watch.
Mhm.
Those are both ways that we really interpret the world through our eyes and through our hands. And
Yeah.
curious, do you have in mind a next body part that you want to highlight?
um, I like the mouth. I I actually had quite a bit experiments about related to the mouth. When I didn't show it in the slides, but in my experiment year, I try putting all different kinds of things in my mouth. And um, I think the reason I was drawn to it is because that is the mouth is the gateway of consuming, right? Like literally consuming something. And um, you know, because a lot of my work about internalizing and about embodiment. So it's really, there's no other part better than a mouth to have that visceral to deliver that visceral experience about internalizing. So yeah, mouth.
I'm also curious, with your history in economics, a PhD in economics, how do you see that showing up and serving specifically in your art practice? And if so, how?
That's a good question. Actually, obviously, anybody who has known that I'm an economist and also an artist, they would ask this question. It was just like because they these two areas seem completely irrelevant. And I guess my answer is just like, yeah, wow, the connection is me. Like I am practicing as uh, a social scientist, and in the meantime, that's the way that I think. That's the way that I operate, and think I would think very logically, and I think that is the source of my control showing at in art. Like I think logically things need to fall into places, and I think through art I am still to trying to learn to lose control a little bit. Like it, in order to as economists, in order to make sense, things need to be logical, everything needs to be logical, and but you know I guess in art, I need to embrace that concept, which is it's not necessarily everything needs to be logical, but it's not necessary that everything needs to make sense, right? So, but I think if you look at my art, you can still see like a kind of like a clear display of logic. I think that um, it's is what I am and trying to be better.
I definitely see the iterative process, to be sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you talked about your deep love for film and video, and clearly you have dove right on into that here with Watchers. And I'm curious, is this a avenue that you imagine you will need to continue on? And if so, what are your plans for your next? Do you have another video in the making? And what are you most uh, excited to explore in that?
Yeah, I do. And the funny thing is, initially when I had the passion for film studies, I didn't care for being a director, and I wanted to be a critic. I want to analyze the films, and I want to learn the actual beauty behind the scene. And so I wasn't gonna be a doer, and then now I'm kind of becoming a doer. So uh, to answer your question, I do have a film slash video that's in the making. I have the idea of it. I am making the objects for the performance, and I am uniquely excited about this upcoming project, mainly because I will not be in front of camera. I will be behind camera. So because of the concept, um, I need twins to perform, and I am not a twin. So therefore, so far all my performance-based videos, it was me being the performer, and it was, and it's been important that me performing the collaborating with the objects that I make. It's been important for me. Um, but I think it would be a new experience for me for the next project that, well, what if you can let go of that control a little bit and, or maybe more control, standing behind the camera, the control, stand behind the camera and, and that way it will be the first time for me to see how it's done, like, and put myself in the role of the viewer, not the role of the performer. So yeah, I'm actually quite excited about that.
Excellent. So before we close out, I just want to kind of give the floor to you if there's anything that you want to kind of wrap up and make sure that you share that you perhaps didn't touch on but have thought about as something that you wanted to talk about, or something to leave with the audience before we close out today's talk.
Um, Not much. I don't do a very good job keeping up with my website, and I will. I promise. This specific piece, Watchers, which is probably I'm the most proud of. It's not on the website yet, but it will be. And so please bear with me a little bit. If you want to watch the film, please go to Rife Gallery. It's in display now. And also, if you want to watch the full 6-minute film, feel free to email me and I'll be happy to share.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much, Isabel, for the generosity of your time and talent. Big thank
Thank
you.
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Thank you to Char Norman for curating this excellent exhibition, all the other artists that made the whole of the exhibition really wonderful. Of course, thank you to the governor, the legislature, and the Ohio Arts Council's board, who all support the Ohio Arts Council, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and have a great day.